What's up, everybody? My name is Mike, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Or is this TikTok? Or Instagram? I don't know. Anyway, a while back, I made a video talking about how you could make a vocal booth, like the one behind me, for under $500. Now, when I built this one back in 2019, it only cost me about $350. But, inflation, things being the way they are now, I'm going to say you can still probably get it for under $500. Now, I recently moved it from downstairs in my garage to upstairs here in my office. So I figured I'd take that time to show you how, once it's taken apart and everything, I put everything all together just so you can kind of see the basics. I can talk. So you can see the basics of how it's made and how simple it is, because you don't need to be spending thousands of dollars on a professionally made booth if you can spend a tenth of that and make it yourself. So if you have some, relatively simple skills, the ability to measure and cut wood and screw it together, then you can make your own booth in about 2 to 3 days. I'm no master woodworking person. I'm not a carpenter. I just built this because I needed a booth. So stick around. I'm going to show you how it was put together right now. Okay, so first off, obviously, the floor. The floor is important. Now, my floor already has padded, carpeted, all that fun stuff. So what I did is I took a couple of moving blankets. The heavier, the better. I folded them over, and these are similar to the ones that I used. Not exactly the same, but close enough. Obviously, you can get moving blankets pretty cheaply. I took 2 layers of moving blankets, folded them over top one another, so I've basically got 4 layers right there of blankets. Now, after that, I went to Walmart and I found a 4 foot by 8 foot foam rubber pad. Similar to this one, not the exact same thing, but pretty close. Cut that in half, got a 4x4 square, put those on top of each other, and then I have an extra 1.5 inches of foam padding. You want to have as much as you can underneath your floor just to absorb all the vibrations and keep out as much floor noise as possible, especially if you have kids rumbling around your house. Now, as for the flooring and the walls, I use this. It's 3/8 inch plywood. It's not very thick. Ideally, if you can afford it, get something thicker. But this is what I used because I was trying to make it cheaply and light, because originally I built my booth on wheels. If you can, use this. It's 3/4 inch MDF. It's what places like Whisper Room use to make their booths. It's dense, it's heavy, it's expensive, but it works really well at rejecting outside noise. Now for the corners, I used 4x4 posts because I had 3 of them laying around the house. You don't need anything this big and tough. 2x4s will work just fine, and at the price difference, 2x4s are going to be a lot cheaper. So I did a 4 foot by 4 foot square, so I ended up needing, I think, about a dozen, and that includes for the ceiling and framing at the door. And you are going to want to frame your floor as well, because if you don't, you're going to end up with corner posts that want to fall down. I reinforced mine with 2x4s and I think maybe a 2x6 in there. And even with that, the floor was so floppy that I still had to reinforce them temporarily with boxes and baskets that were heavy. Now, there are a couple different ways to do your walls. Once you have your corner posts up, if you decide to do it this way, that is, then all you need to do is screw in your plywood from the outside, and then you can add the measured 2x4 for the center studs after that. And then suddenly your corner posts are no longer trying to fall down. If you decide to do it the other way, because there are a few different ways you can do it, if I had it to do over again, I would probably build my walls first, get all the insulation in them, and then cover them with fabric, because then you can just move each wall individually. But there are pros and cons to each way. If you do it the pre-made wall way, then you end up with much heavier walls. If you do it the way I did it here, it's a lot easier, especially if you're just one person doing it by yourself. So that's a choice you're going to have to make. Now, as far as the insulation is concerned, this is the stuff that I think is probably the most popular. You can get it at Home Depot, you can get it at Lowe's, you can get it all over the place. Obviously, you see Home Depot is sold out, so here's the stuff at Lowe's. You can get it in a couple of different sizes. You can get it at 16-inch wide or 24-inch wide. I should have gotten 24, but at the time I did 16. Now, the stuff that I have in my walls, I don't think they make anymore. Or if they do, it's packaged differently. I couldn't find it. The stuff I'm using is R32. This is different. This is the stuff that they specifically make for interior walls. It's called Safe and Sound. It's made to be a sound barrier. It's 3 inches thick, I believe, and it works great. I don't know how it is compared to the stuff I used, the exact same thing, but this is basically what it looks like inside of the wall. So I only used the 16-inch, which meant that I had to cut an additional piece to go down the side. But if you use the 24 and you do a center stud at 24 inches on center on your wall, then that stuff will just fit right in there perfectly. Now, I did mine this way rather than pre-wrapping my walls because I wanted to show you what it looked like. It's pretty simple as far as the design is concerned, and there's not really a whole lot going on. It's just center stud down the middle, framing down on the bottom, and not even any framing on the top, because the ceiling is basically going to screw down directly on top of the rest of it. Now, the ceiling is the one part that I do recommend you attach your center stud to, put your insulation in, and wrap it in whatever fabric you're going to use, because lifting that thing and getting it up on top of your booth is going to be a whole lot easier if you do it beforehand and you don't have insulation that you're trying to put up into your ceiling. Now, as far as fabric, I just used flat sheets. These are full-size prices, but the twins are cheaper. You can get a 6-pack on Amazon real cheap, or you can get sheets at Walmart. Once you have that done, this is pretty much what it looks like. A giant marshmallow or the padded room at a mental hospital. So that's what you want it to look like. It's cushy, it's cozy, and there's almost no echo at all. And that's even with just 3 walls on. So this is what mine looked like after I was finished. You can see that it's a pretty sturdy setup at this point, and that's without the 4th wall being on. The ceiling was actually really easy to put in this way because I pre-wrapped all of the insulation and everything. Did that on the floor, picked it up, plopped it down, it's good. Now, moving on to the 4th wall, or your front wall. I used a jigsaw to cut the hole for my door. You can make the door whatever size you want. I made mine 6 feet tall and 28 inches wide. But after that, you're going to need a hole saw to cut out the hole for the doorknob. And actually, that's pretty much it. I framed my door out with 2x4s and a couple of 2x6s because I also decided to put a window in my door. Obviously, that's something that you don't necessarily need to do. But I did. So after that, this is the door mounted. These are the hinges that I used. They're 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch Amazon brand, nothing fancy hinges. They were cheap. I got them in a pack, I think, of 18. And put those on. Added weather stripping in all of the door gaps because there are always going to be little gaps and things like that. So if you add some weather stripping, when you close the door, you don't get sound leaking in. This stuff actually works really well. Also, Amazon. As well as the doorknob. The doorknob was an Amazon Basics brand as well. It's nice and sturdy, aluminum, kind of run-of-the-mill standard, pretty cheap. But it works great. And obviously, when you're framing and insulating your door, you're going to do it the same way you do your walls, except you don't want to insulate where you're going to put in your doorknob. That's how I did my door latch, and I used, I believe, a 1-inch hole saw to get the holes for that started. I may have just drilled the rest of it out. I don't really remember. Now for the floor in the booth, so you're not making thump noises every time you move around. This is an old yoga mat that I cut up, and then I got some 3-inch thick upholstery foam from Home Depot. Again, you can get that anywhere. It's relatively cheap. Not really for sound absorption, more just for squishy comfort than anything. But it also does help to knock down any kind of vibrations or reflections that you might get from your floor. And then on top of that, I covered it with a nice, cushy, oh so elegant fuzzy rug because why not? I mean, you want your booth to be comfortable. You're going to be spending a lot of time in here. It may as well be cushy. Used the same hole saw that I used for the door to make a hole in the corner of the booth to run all my cables out. And this is more or less what the finished product looks like. I put up all my kind of old crappy acoustic foam that I got years back. Anything you have sitting around, I used to cover everything. The more decent quality acoustic foam I used for the interior walls. The cheaper stuff I put on the ceiling and other places. That's where the cables come in, and everything goes straight to the interface. And obviously I anchored my desk that I made to the wall because I didn't like it falling over all the time because it's very thin. I got a swivel mount from a monitor, and everything else is routed back to my computer on the outside of the booth. If you like to sit when you talk, I highly, highly recommend getting a drum throne. I got a little cheapy. Now, I don't weigh that much. I'm about 175 pounds, and this thing suits me great. It's comfy. I can sit in it for hours and not have any kind of problems. If you're making a booth that's as small as the one that I made, then I highly recommend it because it saves space. You don't have a back, but you know what? You have a really cozy booth wall that you can lean on. And I do that all the time. I'm constantly in the corner here, leaning in my booth. Okay, so as you can see, I've stretched out this track so that you can get a really big view of the meter and where levels go. This is how I would normally have everything set up if I were recording. This is in the booth with the door closed. My gain is set so that all my peaks hit between about -6 and -12 at the highest. And I have no effects right now that are set up other than a -1 limiter. And I have my EQ set to roll off at 80 megahertz. That just eliminates some of the low-end rumble noise and things like that. So with that set up in the booth, I'm going to get quiet, and you can see the noise floor is pretty good. So yeah, that's that. It's hitting well below -60, and that's even with my kids ignoring my light that's on, telling them that they need to be quiet and not yell because I'm recording. So anyway, thank you for watching. I hope this was at least informational. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'm horrible at social media, but I'm trying to get better. So I hope if you decide to make your own booth, I would recommend making one bigger than mine, because 4 feet by 4 feet with 6 inches of insulation and acoustic foam on top of it leaves you roughly 3 feet by 3 feet, and that's being generous. So, yeah, good luck. Happy building. Take care. Till next time.